if you have a point or where you are in any circumstance, and if you want to get here, it's not always obvious that you should compensate by being more often here. But sometimes it does work. Like if you're too kind, for example, you have to be sort of, you should still be kind, but a little less kind. Being a brutal, like trying to become Adolf Hitler is probably not the best way to go. Even if it's, but I do think that sometimes it actually does work to do like sort of the opposite, to sort of, because you have to train sort of, yeah, and perhaps that's a small, fastest way sometimes to like go to that, to balance it out in behaviors and stuff. But yeah, because if you're only aiming for the middle, perhaps you're not compensating enough if it's something you want to sort of ingrain as a middle way. But if you end up with only the two extremes, that's not good as well. So it's not obvious when you should think about it as something that's, like for example, in specific situation, if you have to be 4 out of 10 points angry, and you usually 1.5, if you're 8 at that circumstance, when it's the sufficient amount is 4, it's still wrong. I mean, it should be a 4, but perhaps you can train yourself being consciously testing being an 8 in different circumstances, and when it's real, you have it's easier to get to 4 in that circumstance. Perhaps that's perhaps a way to think about it. Yeah. Anyway, what more? So changing environment a bit. I think that yes, it's the appropriate amount in that situation, basically. But yes, I think it's good practice in writing, because if you're acting it out, I mean, you can just yell. Unless if you're in your car, then you can do it. But if you're in most more normal places, or a big house when no one's near, and hope your neighbor is not too close to the house or something like that. But in most circumstances, it's probably not the best approach. So, but that's why writing, I think, is a really good way. And it doesn't have to be, if you're just trying in speech, it can be, I mean, you don't have to gel to be an asshole. And I don't know if it is interesting. It gives so much momentum, or what's the word? Force, power. A lot of sources of inhibition, what's the word? Constraints are just disappear, so I think it's important to experiment with it, but it's also dangerous because it's definitely not a constructive way to deal with people at all times, and it can be really devastating, I think, if used in a way that's not very careful. When around people, when you're on your own, that's fine, but it's and I really felt like doing that is, I mean, it's scary how it's scary how good you can feel when you're sort of, but I would not feel that, I mean, not necessarily evil, because that does not contribute to my social well-being or my well-being at all. But being arrogant, especially when no one's like, only for myself being arrogant, I think that's quite nice. And one reason that I'm perhaps comfortable with it is that I've always been sort of, I mean, it's essential for performance in athletics and even perhaps studies and stuff, to feel a sense kind of superiority towards the challenge. Not necessarily to other people, but that could be quite. But I mean, it depends. But it's usually not a good. Not good for yourself and not ethically acceptable. And socially acceptable, for that matter. And there's a good reason for that. It's because you don't want the Auschwitz. You do not want that at all. Because that was what's down there, if it's going too far. But it's essential in those two challenges that we want to overcome, to be like, really feel confident. It's really about confidence, I guess. And confidence is